If I say I'm feeling angry, you can do a million things with that. But if we're really sitting in a room together and I say to you, I'm feeling so angry, I'm feeling like you don't see me, like, or that you didn't hear me, or that I don't matter, right? It's more, you get more. And in a relationship, we need the more. We absolutely do.
And I'm so excited to have Dr. Jackie back with us. It's been 2 years. I can't believe it. We were just chatting, maybe a little over 2 years at this point. But
Wow.
thank you for being back.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was very surprised when you said it was 2 years. It didn't feel like 2 years.
Here's a secret. I was actually working with couples in that way. Anyway, I had been walking the edge of the plate, as we used to say, and not doing a real traditional kinds. It never made sense to me to look for the problem. It's like here are two people who really love each other and who want to try to figure this out. And I always say that the people that groom my dog, I mean, they have a license. They have more training than any of us ever have for relationships. And love is not enough.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. When you're having fun, it just flies.
Yes.
But I would just love for the audience to know, what have you been up to the last 2 years? What has transpired and just what has really come from your business and just your own growth in the last 2 years?
Well, it's very interesting. Over the last 2 years, I don't want to say completely, but it feels like completely changed how I am working with clients. First of all, somebody brought to my attention, I was working with a woman in the UK named Colette Macbeth, who is brilliant and fabulous. And she said one day on a call, you're acting as if you're people that aren't your clients yet are coming to you as blank slates. And I said, oh my gosh, that's true. And what I know is that couples typically have read books, gone to workshops, done retreats, perhaps done other work with relationship coaches, done some personal therapy, maybe couples therapy. They're not blank slates. So it was such a sort of wow, aha moment. And so I thought, how can I approach people and how can I hold the space for couples who are coming with so much experience? And what kind of experience do they have? And what might be missing for them that I do in the way that I work that other people don't? And I want to tell you, I am so excited about working this way with the understanding that people come with lots of experience and life experience, relationship experience. And so 3 things happened. I realized that foundationally, I work with people in I call it the Trifecta Method, which is foundationally, it's a win-win-win. I win, you win, we win. And that all decisions, and I've always worked this way, sort of, I've never languaged it specifically. I never named it. But that is the way that I believe the best relationships work for the longest period of time, right? Lasting relationships, lasting love. And that is, again, win-win-win. So that we look through that lens whenever we make decisions, we have a disagreement, we're looking to make a shift or a change, one of us or both of us.
Yeah.
The second thing is that I've again worked with couples about always, but never named it clearly, is that I work in themes and patterns. And this is so interesting, right? Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And typically couples have 2 or 3 patterns that recur. It's why often people say, we're back to doing blah, blah again, or this is a recurring issue that we go around and around and around. It's a theme and a pattern. So now I'm really talking to people about, I call it that pesky pattern, because they're not earth shaking, but they're life transforming when you get a handle on what the pattern is.
Ooh, so well said.
And then the third thing is that, again, that I work with people, but I didn't sort of name it. And that is triggers. We have triggers that come up, and it might look like we have a lot of different triggers. It's like many arms of the same octopus. You're going to love this. The truth is that most people have 2 or 3 triggers max. So when you start thinking about triggers, a lot of times people think, oh, I have so much work to do and I'm triggered by this and triggered by that. And it's like, no, think about it as arms of the same octopus. So when I've started to really talk on podcasts and a little bit more in social media, not quite, I'm just now moving into social media and starting to be clear about these 3 very distinct ways that I work with clients. Because one of the things that's so important to me is sustainability. Anytime you make a change, I want couples to make a change and have it be sustainable, dependable, reliable. I don't want them to do their work and then end their engagement with me. And in 3 or 4 or 5 days or weeks, they're right back to doing the same old thing. And that happens more often than you know.
Yeah.
And so this is, so sustainability is something that's really important to me. So how do we do that? Well, we do that by looking at patterns, looking at triggers, and foundationally agreeing to the win-win-win.
I love it. It's so solid too, because when you think about every aspect of that 3 steps, the foundational pieces, it ends with that sustainability, because you can talk about it, you can work through it, but what happens after you leave that? What is that sustainability piece? Because it goes back to just the patterns and the 3 triggers. And, thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And I love the octopus analogy, because I was like picturing that too, because it really gives it that validity of how each aspect of when we are triggered, it goes back to the 2 or 3 same things. Like it could be little like small nuances, but it's really those foundational pieces.
Exactly. And the result of looking at or through this lens, I'll just say it that way, or looking at the work that I do specifically, it occurred to me also that people don't need to be in marriage coaching for months and months and years and years. That was a really old therapy model that somehow coaches got into. We did the 4 sessions a month, and each session was an hour. And I stopped doing that with clients a number of years ago. Clients decide how many hours they want to work a month. Sometimes an hour is enough, sometimes an hour and a half, because they're teasing out something, sometimes a 30-minute check-in because they're trying a new strategy, because you know how big I am on tools and strategies. And so they can decide, and then they can schedule a call when they want to. It's up to them. We don't have these regular, because people are busy. They're traveling. Often couples have children. Their work is very flexible. And so I'm working with clients in that same sort of flexible way. So the additional piece is people don't need 6 months or 8 months, 9 months or a year, that because they come in with so much experience and we're really tweaking specific areas that have associated, strategies and tools. I love this. I started a 5-session offer a couple of months ago. And a lot of my clients said, oh, you can't get anything done in 5 weeks, 5 sessions. It can be over 5 weeks, or people can spread it out or compress it as much as they want. But here's the thing, they can. when people have so much awareness of what's going on and they're clear about what's working, what's not working, what's missing, then we can fill in those pieces and help them get where they want to be. I can help them fill in the gaps and get where they want to be much faster. People just don't need to be in couples coaching for months and months.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language because I do believe that, especially since I'm going back into the therapy field. And one thing is I really don't see people coming for 5 years, and like just talk therapy doesn't always work for everybody. I think it's multiple entities. And I think it's also giving that power back to the couple of, okay, what does that 5 sessions look like? It might be 5 weeks, it might be over 5 months potentially, depending, like obviously it varies, I'm sure, couple to couple. But I love what you said, like we all have the knowledge within, and sometimes we are very aware of that. It's just tweaking things, and that's where you come in, where you're able to see, okay, we know what's not working, we know where we want to go, but we don't know how to get there, and you fill that gap.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. And I think that's important. It's important to recognize.
It is. And sometimes you know how I love the retreat model. And I used to do before COVID, the 5-day destination retreat. And again, people are just getting back to traveling. So I do a 2-day retreat that's virtual.
Mm.
And couples are really loving that too. I always suggest that they go to a hotel or they send kids to grandma and grandpa if it's possible, so that they really can have the 2 full days. And while I might not be on Zoom with them for 10 hours each day, I am on Zoom. I want to say it's averaging 6 hours for the 2 days. And sometimes one partner can turn their camera off, or they can leave the room, or they can leave the house and go off and take a walk, whatever so again, very flexible. But that works for people too, that want to move really fast past a sticky issue. And so the 2-day virtual retreat is really incredible.
Yeah, and I think it's like what I'm picking up too is just going at your own pace and knowing what is going to be right for each couple. Because I do agree, I don't think people need months and months and years of coaching or therapy. I think it really is, what's the issue? Let's really get to the root of it and fix the problem, or give you those strategies and solutions and tools to actually illuminate that aspect of, okay, I want to change something. I'm really looking at it as, okay, this is the issue. Let's get it under control, and then actually follow through with going back to the piece of the sustainability aspect.
Yeah. Are you working with people virtually? Is that your plan
Yes,
to?
yeah, it'll be all virtual. So that's
Yeah.
a big aspect of just having that flexibility, because a lot of people, like I personally, like my husband and I go to couples therapy, I have therapy, and just having like that aspect of a short-term therapy versus being in it forever. And I think that just gives that flexibility, because I don't think it's a one size fits all. And I think every person is unique, is different, and needs different things. And especially when they're self-aware already, sometimes it can be a little too self-aware, and then they like miss some things, the blind spots come out. But I think that's the beautiful thing. It's really figuring out what's best for you. But I think the old therapy model is weekly sessions for like X amount of years, and that doesn't.
In the office, telemed actually opened up that whole area for us, right? I mean, I transitioned out of doing therapy into doing coaching in 1999. It took me 3 full years to do that, in terms of my training and then getting different clients, and all of that was a 3-year transition. And in those years, as a therapist, we couldn't advertise. And we couldn't work on the phone. So there were so many restrictions. When telemed started happening, it opened up the whole field for therapists, didn't it? It was just really wonderful for us and for clients.
Yes, and that's the beautiful thing too, because I never thought I would go back, but even just having a 7-year hiatus allowed me to kind of see how much has changed post-COVID and how much more flexibility is out there. And I didn't go back to the same model before. I was seeing 30 clients on a weekly basis in the office versus now I can do like 5 or 10, and my husband can watch the baby, and it all makes life a lot easier for us. But it's that flexibility, and I think so many people are looking for that flexibility. And I kind of want to take it back to our previous episode where communication is so important, and we talked heavily about that last time you were on. And I'm just curious because so much has shifted, even in the last 2 years, even in the last few months, when it comes to a lot of the younger generations, when they're communicating. I think like I've had several conversations with the younger generations recently about dating and relationships and just how a lot of people don't really communicate in person as much anymore. A lot of it's done through texting or on the apps and everything. I'm really curious because you're an international love guru, in my opinion, as well. But what is your take on all of the communication aspect and how much it's shifted in the last few years?
Yeah, I am a dinosaur when it comes to that, and I have a lot of very definite opinions. I think that we have relationships in real time. We are with each other in shared space. And I think that it's a huge mistake and can really be a treacherous path to date, to meet people online and to date people when we're busy texting, even on the phone, because we co-create these amazing experiences with each other in real time, face to face, how people look, what their subtle body language is, how they smell, how they touch us, how they receive us. That is crucial. It's so important. And you can't get that on the phone. You can't even get it on Zoom. And you for sure can't get it on a text message. I think that texting are you ready? I think texting is laziness, right? I think it's lazy. I think it says about us, I don't respect you. I don't respect myself. I don't respect the process. I'm not sure anybody's going to really like me. I'm not sure I really want to show up. And I think that there are so many messages about being with people, meeting people, dating, and interacting with people on a text that really put people behind the eight ball. I think it's a serious disadvantage. I have even said to my adult children, my daughter answered me with a contraction one day on a text a couple of years ago. And I got hurt immediately. And I stopped myself and I said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm bringing all that emotion and all that meaning making to this contraction.
Yeah.
And so I called her and I said, you might not have time to talk now, but let's chat today, tomorrow, the next day, not an emergency, but I really have something that I want to talk to you about. She said, all right, I'll call you in an hour and a half. And we talked and I said, are you mad at me? And she said, no, why would I be mad at you? And I said, because I had this really sort of newsy text
Yeah.
and asked you for a time, that was convenient that we could chat. And you sent me back a contraction. And she started to laugh. She said, Mom, that's what you do on texts. And I said, well, I'd like to request that we not do that. And that we at least text a 3 or 4 word sentence. And she laughed and she said, I totally get it. And I can do that. And they both laugh and they both do that now because I'm not used to it and I don't like it.
Yeah.
I really like the communication in which I know how you're feeling. I know what you're thinking. I know how to take the communication and I don't have to guess. I don't have to wonder. I don't have to assume. Because I can assume that everything is fine. And she actually might have sent me a message letting me know indirectly that she wasn't okay with whatever was going on. I don't want to assume. I want to know.
So
Okay.
true. And I love that you said this because I just had a conversation with a friend the other day where he was asking for relationship advice from me. And I was just like, well, what do you think? And like putting it back on them. But it was more so the individual was like kind of worried to call their significant other instead of like they were talking to me instead of their significant other. I was like, no, go call them, do not text, because that can get lost in translation, just like what you outlined so beautifully of just how sometimes we might say something, or laziness. I didn't really think of it in that way, but I do agree to a certain extent, because I think sometimes people will be like, oh, let me call you back, and then you can have the conversation. But I think when you're texting, especially when it comes to relationships, is having that direct conversation so nothing gets misconstrued, or you're not assuming things. That used to happen to me a lot, because I'm like, I would get lost in translation, because I would be upset about something and not actually verbalize that on the phone or in person. Of course, in person, I think, is the best way to communicate, because you can get all the nonverbals and like the subtle things versus
Exactly.
like on the
And you
phone.
can share your feelings. We don't
Yes.
share feelings in a text message. If I say I'm feeling angry, you can do a million things with that. But if we're really sitting in a room together and I say to you, I'm feeling so angry, I'm feeling like you don't see me, like, or that you didn't hear me, or that I don't matter, right? It's more, you get more. And in a relationship, we need the more. We absolutely do. These tough conversations, we have tough conversations throughout the life of our relationships. And when we don't muster the courage to sit in the presence of our partners, when we don't take the time and we're not careful to craft our language so that we're saying exactly what we mean, and we're trying to transmit exactly how we're feeling, then it's laziness, and it creates, I think, long-term breakdown, and sometimes not so long-term, but breakdown of the fabric of the relationship. Because every minute of every day that we are in relationship with each other, we are continuing to weave the threads in the fabric of our relationship. And I think that it's so rich and so sweet. We don't want to miss any of that, even miss having the hard conversations, because the hard conversations end when they're done mindfully and intentionally and with respect. Those conversations end with us feeling closer. And I like being able to shout that from the rooftop, so that people really understand that it doesn't mean we might be breaking up. It doesn't mean you're going to be mad at me, or there is going to be all of this silence, or days of not talking, or not having sex, or whatever people think it means, or whatever it might have meant in other relationships. Let's decide that today, in the relationship that we're in, how we are going to show up and what we are going to co-create together.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I so agree with this, because, it's interesting. I used to be very passive aggressive, and it was very hard for me to vocalize or communicate in relationships. And the beautiful thing with my husband and I is really the way we communicate. And I think that goes with knowing, okay, we're not getting divorced, like if we have an argument. And I think a lot of people, especially if you've come from family dynamics and family dysfunction where there was a lot of argument, or like throwing around certain words that would end a relationship, and having that fear of it versus being vulnerable and just talking through it and realizing you're on the same team. It's you against the world. Essentially, that's kind of how I view it, where once you communicate and you actually talk about understanding where each person's coming from and actually listening to understand versus listening to respond, it changes everything, because then you can actually hear the person versus thinking, okay, it's the end of the relationship, even if you're dating or in a long-term relationship. But that's the biggest piece of it, is actually communicating and understanding where each other are coming from and getting to a resolution for it. Because then if you don't, what you said earlier, it goes back to those patterns and the cycle of the same exact conversation in a different way.
Exactly, because I will react or respond in the same way. I will, because I bring myself with me wherever I go.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I grew up in a lot of violence, and so I learned how to shut down, not in a way that was visual or visible, rather visible or audible, because that wouldn't have been safe, but in a way that really protected me.
Yeah.
So I'm not a runner, but I don't run out of the room. I don't need, but there is a way that I used to shut down emotionally. I would just to protect myself. And so what I had to do once I recognized this pattern, what I learned to do was flop on the floor and hold on to the leg of a piece of furniture, a really sturdy piece of furniture, and say, so my impulse is to take myself away emotionally. I'm not going to do this. I'm sitting on the floor. I'm holding onto this leg. I am here. I'm listening. I want to listen, and we're going to get through the conversation. I'm not going anywhere. And I may have to remind myself during the conversation that I'm interested and I'm listening as my own reminder.
Yes.
And my husband was so wonderful and so amazing. He had a different experience of being abandoned. And so the fact that I was doing that and he could see me holding on to the leg of the furniture, sitting on the floor and saying, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I'm going to do this. Even if it's a really big struggle for me in the moment, we'll get through this, but it might be messy. I used to say it all the time. This might be really messy. And he
Yeah.
could do messy because he was relaxed that he wasn't going to be abandoned. He wasn't going to be left or rejected.
Yeah. Oh, so powerful. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this for hours because it's just so juicy. And I think it's really important that people understand it's that communication style. It's going to evolve and change. And I think it's knowing that you're growing together in that relationship and you're learning each other's communication styles and what that looks like. And I think to kind of bring it back with the texting, a lot of times you're not going to get the full story or the full understanding when you're texting back and forth. Even if you're doing voice notes, yes, you can hear their tonality and everything, but at the end of the day, there's nothing like having that face to face.
Right. There's still that veil, and it still puts us a little bit separate. And it is that separation that we really want to avoid. Because when I talk about communication, I'm not talking about talking, because we all talk all day long. Communication for me with partners means open-hearted, vulnerable, mindful. So we're not just talking, we really are undefended, or we're working on becoming undefended. We're working, it's a process, right? But when we set our intention and then we make the commitment to be undefended, that might be a path. I certainly wasn't undefended the first, I don't know, maybe 50 times I was holding onto that leg.
Yeah.
But when we make those commitments to ourselves, to our partners, and to the relationship, and see, and there is the win-win-win, then all things are possible.
Exactly. It's just taking the armor off and knowing that you're not fighting against each other. You're fighting for that common relationship, that common ground to understand each other. Because the more we talk about things and actually create that open heart, vulnerability space for each other, it does grow deeper. I've never seen, like, even my own relationship, I've seen how much more we've grown, and we've just celebrated our first year of marriage, and just how that has really evolved even from dating to engagement to marriage and the evolution of that, and just really being open. And I think it takes both people, and also it's like that
Absolutely.
win-win-win across the board. It really
Yeah.
is.
Absolutely.
And with just everything that you have learned over the last 2 years, I know you mentioned social media is something you started to dive into, but I'm really curious, what has been maybe a lesson or two you've learned in the last 2 years when it comes to your business?
I really love social audio. And during the pandemic, I got very, very involved in Clubhouse and doing rooms, hosting rooms filled with people and talking about dating and relationships. And recently I have become, I don't want to say active yet. I'm just becoming active on Chatter, which is a really interesting social audio site. And I have a channel for dating and a channel for love and marriage. And so I think that for me, when I say social media, Clubhouse was very associated with Instagram. And I never had an Instagram presence. So I said, all right, I'm going to start to do Instagram more and more and more. And this is so interesting. You'll appreciate this. What I started to do was the old way of interacting with clients on social media. So even though I'm interacting with clients in a very, very different way, my social media sort of looked like, well, the comfortable way, not old, outdated, but old, comfortable, where it was more edutainment than it was really holding for that yumminess that I've really stepped fully into in social audio and with clients. So I don't want to say struggle, the challenge right now is that in the written word, I can get away from what's comfortable. We all do that, right?
Yes.
Get away from what's comfortable and really start to say in writing in paper, i.e. Instagram, this same kind of really vulnerable, open-hearted way of speaking on social media, not the professional, disconnected education. And these are 3 steps for this and 4 secrets for that. So, so that's what I'm working on now, is to really be 100%, to have stepped into working this way and showing up this way publicly. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, so much sense. And I think too, it's like, because we both have that professional background where you were taught to like everything was hidden and you have to show up a certain way. And that's even a transition I've been going through recently, is just being able to show up more vulnerably and show more of myself versus that professional side of me, like incorporating the personal aspect, because I think that's what allows people to really connect. And what you said, like the old way, like
Yes.
just creating those spaces for people to really give permission. Once we give permission to ourselves, it allows other people to give permission to themselves to show up, and it's practicing what we preach. And it's been a journey for me, but I think a lot of what you have gone through too is that professional side where it's kind of shedding that layer. It's still professional, but there's so much more warmth to it. You're able to show up as such and still
Yes.
connect.
Yes, yes. And, we were trained to not be there. It wasn't about us. We couldn't have thoughts or opinions. It was really holding that safe space for other people. So stepping into that and really, to be seen, I have to keep reminding myself this is really okay. And as you quite correctly said, it helps people be able to connect to us.
Yes, absolutely. And because that was some of the feedback I got like the last few months. People are like, Caroline, like there's like a disconnect. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize, because I think it's part of that professionalism where you want to show up, it's always about everybody else. But I think when you start to incorporate who you are as a person, it just gives that space to really continue to evolve in those relationships. And of course, there's boundaries and everything like that. But I think the biggest thing is just knowing it's for the greater good. And that's where I feel like the more we show up as us, the more it just gives more opportunities for that authenticity.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that, because being authentic and showing up as my true self doesn't mean I don't have boundaries, right? They are mutually exclusive. So yeah, I love that you said that.
Yes. And just even with everything that you've already accomplished and will continue to accomplish, I'm curious, what are your future goals and aspirations for the next year or so?
I love where I have evolved to over the last year and a half. And so I'm going to just keep doing more of what I'm doing
Love it.
and conquer Instagram so that I can step into the written space, if you will, with that same openness and vulnerability that I've learned to do on podcasts and with clients in presentations live. Yeah.
I love it. I can't wait to see it evolve, because I know there's so much wisdom that you've given so many of your clients, as well as on Clubhouse, because that's where we originally met. but just everywhere else too, that you've been able to touch individuals' lives and will continue to evolve from there. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the growth mindset and just wanting to continue to spread that goodness around. But other than that, Dr. Jackie, where can people find you, find your services, everything that you have to offer? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
Sure. So my email is probably a good place. If you're on social media, drop into my DMs on Instagram. If you're on Clubhouse or Chatter, you can drop a voice note. And my email address is Dr. Jackie, DrJackie, at Dr. Jackie Black, DrJackieblack.com. And yeah, I'd love to, and I love to get emails. You know, you don't have to, I do have I'm going to finish a sentence in a minute. I do have, you know, an application and then what do I want to say? A calendar, an online calendar. But for your audience, I really want to be so available. And so that's why the voice notes or the direct emails, don't worry about emailing me. You're not interrupting me. I love to be available. So I love you and the work that you do. And so I want your audience to email me and I'll email back, drop your phone number, and we can set up a time to talk in person, in real time.
I love it. Well, Dr. Jackie, I so honor just what you've been able to create for so many families in the sense of couples, individuals, but really when it comes to that love, that connection, the communication, and fostering that sustainability for those couples to really thrive and remove patterns that are not serving them. So I just really appreciate you coming back on and sharing what you've been up to and everything you'll continue to do in this world. So thank you again.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with you again. Thank you very much.
Of course, make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Dr. Jackie today? I'm sure she would love to see that comment, and we will see you on the next episode.